Fox 2 presents Hancock and Kelley.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Hancock and Kelley on Fox 2, where we take on the top issues of the week. On the right is John Hancock.
Good morning.
On the left, Michael Kelley.
Hello, everybody.
And I'm Andy Banker. On the agenda, what do Tuesday's elections in other states tell us about what may be coming in Missouri in November in 2024? Also, gutting DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A Missouri senator wants to abolish such offices in the federal government. Low blows from Republican presidential debate number 3. And in our quote of the week, Democrats turn on Democrats over Israel and anti-Semitism. Also coming up, the growing case against the second term for President Biden being made by members of his own party. We begin with Republicans getting steamrolled in state elections over the issue of abortion rights. One of Missouri's leading pro-life Republicans is now signaling a change of course.
I'm all in favor of the people getting to decide it, whether that happens through electing their state legislators who then vote. And that obviously those decisions are subject to the people changing the legislators or legislators, or whether it's through an initiative referendum, and we have that process in Missouri. But however the people decide to make up their minds on this issue, I think that they are the ones who ought to have control here, not 9 unelected judges.
That sounds like a course change, right, from the Republican Party. Ohio voters approved a measure to enshrine abortion rights in their state constitution with 57% support. Virginia's Republican pro-life governor campaigned to win party control of both houses of the state legislature there, but ended up losing both Tuesday. The aftermath of the Dobbs v. Jackson decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade and led to abortion bans in multiple states, including Missouri, continues to fuel election victories for Democrats. So what now for Republicans, John Hancock?
Well, I think the issue is getting settled across the country. You've had, I think, 7 states now that have passed some version of abortion rights, and I think that's going to continue. I suspect if it's on the ballot in Missouri, something like that will pass as well, and then the issue will be largely settled. There'll be some nuances around the edge, but I think that's where it's headed. And it has been, it was a factor this week in some of these elections, particularly in legislative districts. So you've got in Virginia, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you had the House of Delegates and then the state Senate. Republicans had the House and the Democrats narrowly had the Senate. The Democrats ended up controlling both chambers. That was a big win for them. And a lot of those suburban districts where they had elected Republicans prior switched and voted Democrat. And I think the abortion issue has more of an impact on suburban legislative districts than it's going to have in statewide elections.
Does it have legs into November of 24 in a state like Missouri?
I think so.
Is it good for Democrats if it's on the ballot?
It will help Democrats in some suburban districts. There's maybe a couple of them in St. Louis County that could make a difference. There could be one in eastern Jackson County. But once the issue is settled by the voters, which is what the Supreme Court did with the Dobbs decision, once it gets settled as public policy, I don't think this is going to be a long-term shift in politics.
Does this have legs into November of 24?
The fact that we saw Josh Hawley essentially trying to pretend like he's never been Mr. Pro-Life carrying this thing and saying 9 unelected judges, I think shows you right there where it's at. John had said earlier in the year that he didn't think that this would have impact on the elections as we go to November. It's clear now that this will have resonance with voters. And I think you couple that with the chaos that is Donald Trump. Guys, the Republicans have not won an election since Donald Trump's been on the ballot, causing the division inside the Republican Party. Almost cycle after cycle, it's always the Democrats who are coming out and winning. So I think a combination of both the abortion and Donald Trump is going to spell for a great election season in 2024.
Yeah, both of those are true in suburban parts of the country. I don't think, and let's look at the Missouri statewide, for example. Is the abortion issue going to suddenly start electing Democrats as governor and U.S. senator? No, it's not going to happen. But there will be, on the margins, some of these districts where that will be a voting issue. I think abortion as an issue is pretty well settled in the public opinion. It's about 60, somewhere between 53 53 and 60% favor abortion rights, but that's not always the voting issue when you go into candidate elections.
The only thing that we will have to keep an eye on is the extreme rhetoric that's coming from Jay Ashcroft and the Attorney General and all these Republicans who are doubling down on abortion issues. If they continue that rhetoric, it could cost you guys statewide elections.
Well, this is interesting. When it comes to top issues in Missouri, abortion rights is not one of them, according to new polling. With the 2024 elections 1 year away, Michael's firm, Show Me Victories, took a political snapshot 1 year out of the top issues in Missouri, and this one really jumped out. Number one, if we have, there it is, crime and safety, far and away number one. Abortion is not in the top three. Crime and safety, 32%. Taxes and education, pretty far back, almost tied, 19, 20%. What does this tell you, Michael?
Well, I think what it tells you is that it's going to be pocketbook, common sense issues that everyday Missourians are dealing with. Abortion's going to be an issue out there. I think it will play a large role. But if you're a candidate on either side of the aisle, focusing on your core jobs and not these extremist policies are the place to be able to secure the most votes for yourself.
Well, inflation has affected every single person in the country. And there's not one of us that hasn't felt the sting of higher prices, whether it's at the grocery store, at the pump, or wherever. That's the economy, the pocketbook issues, those are the way people vote. That's what's going to inform a lot of the votes. And if you believe the polling, Joe Biden's taken a disproportionate share of the blows on inflation, and I think that spells potential good for the GOP. Now, the Donald Trump factor, may mitigate that some.
Now, we heard from Josh Hawley, the other Republican U.S. Senator from Missouri. Eric Schmidt of St. Louis County says it is time to do away with the various DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion offices in the federal government. He's just introduced the Abolish DEI Government Act, which would do away with at least 40 DEI entities, including DEI offices in the cabinet departments and the military. The offices promote the hiring of a diverse workforce in terms of things like race, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and it promotes policies to prevent workplace discrimination and harassment. Senator Schmidt says DEI initiatives are inherently unfair and wasteful, and that teaching DEI ideology in schools is dangerous. Is he right or wrong, John?
Well, it's in the eye of the beholder. You take the word equity, for example. If equity means everybody ought to have equal opportunity and that you hire the best people, great. But for a lot of people, the word equity means it's socialism. Everybody's equal and you equal outcomes. And I think there's a lot of concern that equal outcomes is not what this country provides. This country provides equal opportunity. So I think Eric Schmidt makes a point.
Do we need DEI offices in the federal government?
Sure we do. It's easy for a 6'4" white guy to be out there saying, hey, the playing field's level for everyone, when he looks around in nearly every meeting and every agency inside the United States government, and for that matter, boardrooms across this country, and they all look like him. This is what levels the playing field for others to be able to find a way to pull themselves up and move them through the process.
I'm all for providing equal opportunity, but at the end of the day, especially in our military, you want the very best person in those positions, period. And that ought to be the objective of the federal government.
Progressive Democrats at St. Louis City Hall dropped their push for a so-called homeless Bill of Rights, which, among other things, would have legalized public defecation for the unhoused. Aldermanic President Megan Green and Alderwoman Alicia Saunier also wanted to force new homeless shelters into neighborhoods without consent from the neighbors, the residents, and the business owners. This came after the mayor ordered a homeless camp removed from City Hall on the lawn there. The camp has now moved 1 block away outside the former city courthouse. John, the Bill of Rights is gone, but the downtown homeless camp is still there. Winter's coming. This issue needs to be addressed somehow, doesn't it?
Well, we've got how many entities out there providing shelter for the homeless, and they're unused and unfilled. I'll tell you who I feel worse for here, the guys that own the porta potty companies. I mean, this would have been, what a contract this would have been with the city of St. Louis. The focus on this issue and the elevation of this issue when you've got crime, you've got economic collapse in many respects in this very city that we're talking about here. They're just focused on the wrong things, and what they're focusing on isn't going to improve the quality of life for the homeless and certainly for anybody else.
What does this tell you, that this is off the radar and that the progressives at City Hall could not push this through?
Well, I think even the progressive ran into a wall that they realize they can't accomplish what their goal is. But people ought to continue to pay attention. This progressive movement is very MAGA-like to me. They have these positions, they move them, they suck up nearly all of the time that government should be focused on policing, roads, trash, basic government services. And as a result, they wind up failing in the end, and nothing else gets done on the places where the things they're supposed to be doing is to get done. It's unfortunate that Megan Green has made these types of things the hallmark of what her legislature is going to do. But ultimately, this is where we're at in St. Louis as long as people continue to elect these extremists.
But is it not an issue that needs to be addressed when we have open homeless camps?
But that's because we're allowing it, Andy.
Downtown
We are
of
allowing
St. Louis.
these camps. We have no more homeless people in St. Louis than we did in the 1980s and the 1990s. We have thousands of folks out there working on the homeless issue. It's whether or not we're actually going to implement the programs or if we're going to entitle people to go out there and live this lifestyle that they may be choosing to do at the expense of the taxpayers in a ridiculous manner.
You got the transitory homeless you've always had, folks
Right.
that for whatever reason things haven't worked out. There's a multitude of programs for those people. They get employed, they get out, and they get housed. Then you've got folks that choose to live a homeless lifestyle, and we're parading them through city government and putting tents all over the place, letting them, put up a tent in a neighborhood somewhere. That's just not right.
Up next, how about that GOP presidential debate number 3? Is anyone jumping up to really challenge Donald Trump? Plus, Democrats sending smoke signals that their nominee may not end up being Joe Biden.